Army colonel denied boarding while escorting fallen comrade, the real reason that outraged a nation. The international airport pulsed like a massive beehive just disturbed. PA announcements echoed shrill and sharp beneath the soaring dome ceilings. Waves of travelers surged like floodwaters in every direction. Eyes glued to their phones, luggage wheels rattling across the endless marble corridors. Children darted wild and uncontained, laughter mixing with sharp parental calls, while weary mothers and fathers trailed behind, faces worn by long flights and interrupted sleep. And then, like the perfect cut in a chaotic symphony, he appeared. No words, no gestures, just steady, deliberate steps. Each tap of polished leather on stone sounded like a distant war drum, announcing the arrival of someone impossible to ignore. His uniform was pressed to military precision, every crease in place, rows of medals gleaming under the terminal lights, like echoes of battlefields still smoldering in memory. His back was straight, shoulders wide, chin lifted, not the posture of someone used to following orders, but someone who gives them. No one needed to be told, no introduction was necessary. They knew by instinct, by a sudden unspoken reverence, that the man walking past them was not an ordinary traveler. He was a warrior. Real? He was a colonel, Colonel David Carter. He had once set foot in places maps hesitated to name, where gunfire never truly fell silent, where every step could be the last. He had led operations kept so classified that even the names of their battles sent chills through the spines of hardened veterans. For Colonel David Carter, facing danger wasn't rare, it was routine, it was life, it was purpose. But today was different. Today, he wasn't deploying, he was escorting a young soldier, Private Jason Reynolds, just 21 years old, a life barely begun, had fallen on a distant battlefield. And now, that soldier was coming home, not to a hero's welcome, but in a flag-draped coffin, quietly bearing all the pride and pain of a nation's sacrifice. Today's mission was heavier than anything Carter had ever carried, not because of risk or stray bullets, but because this wasn't an assignment. To promise, a nation's promise, that no one would be left behind, that wherever they are, under any circumstance, we will bring them home with full honors, with absolute respect. Have you ever stood in an airport surrounded by rushing strangers and wondered, how many carry a grief too deep for words? David Carter moved through the crowd like solid stone. No one stopped him, but no one could truly understand the weight he bore. Beneath the calm, beneath the immaculate uniform and steady gaze, beat a heart clenched not by his own sorrow, but by the pain of a waiting family, a mother awaiting word, and America folding another flag. This flight had no economic objective, no deal to close, no meeting to attend. It was the final flight of a soldier, and Carter, as a senior officer, was not there to represent the military in ceremony. He was there to fulfill something more sacred than any order. He was there as a keeper of a promise. Promise to Jason's family, a promise to himself, and to every comrade who had once fought by his side, breathing quietly together through the dark of a foxhole. A promise to everyone who had ever worn the uniform. No matter what happens, we will bring you home. At all costs. The manager gave a slight bow, his tone flat and rehearsed, as if reading from a script. Sir, I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience, but at this time, we are required to follow certain internal policies. Regrettably, there is no flexibility at the moment. 2 weeks later, Serena stood next to Raymond at Daniel's graduation ceremony. The boy beamed from his wheelchair, holding his diploma like it was the most priceless treasure in the world. "Told you I'd do it," Daniel grinned, chest puffed out with pride. Serena laughed and ruffled his hair. "I never doubted it for a second." Raymond stood nearby, the usual sharpness in his eyes softened, just a little. "You did good, Carter," he said. Smirked. "You don't have to say it." "I know." Daniel glanced between them. "Are you two gonna hug or something?" Raymond sighed. "Absolutely not." Serena rolled her eyes. "God, no way." Dimas laughed. The kind of laugh that made the world feel like it still had hope. And for the first time in a long time, Serena felt like she had built something real, something that truly mattered. Years later, Serena Carter sat in the executive office of Holt Dynamics, her name etched into the glass door with the title, Vice President of Corporate Strategy. That job, that challenge, it had become a mission. Under her leadership, the company expanded ethical labor programs, launched mentorship initiatives, and partnered with minority-owned businesses across the city. New Community Center, the Carter Holt Foundation, was inaugurated funding education and job opportunities for underprivileged youth. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Daniel, now a freshman in college, stood beside her grinning, just like the boy who once received a warm meal on a stormy night. Kindness. It had always been the best investment. Then quietens, a voice rose, strong and clear. "Excuse me," the man said. "Are you having an issue with his military escort rights?" Carter turned. It was a man standing a few spots away, late 60s, weathered face of someone who'd seen life, a cap pulled low over his brow with USMC stitched across the front. A Marine, a veteran, a soldier. The manager fumbled. "No, it's not an issue of authority. We're just following standard procedure." The veteran paused before answering his own question. Half laughing, half bitter. "I've been through security 1,000 times, never seen a procedure that blocks a soldier from bringing a fallen brother home. So, what is this, policy or prejudice?" Silence fell, this time heavy, full of pressure. People began pulling out their phones, recording. The situation was shifting, no longer just a personal dispute, but something bigger. A story that could spread. A ticket agent, the first to turn Carter away, glanced at the manager, face tightening with unease. The manager frowned, rubbed his forehead, eyes darting away. He knew this couldn't be buried any longer. I'll recheck something," he muttered, then quickly walked off. The clerk stared at the screen, typing frantically, as if she could crawl inside it to escape. Colonel Carter didn't move. He stood there, back straight, shoulders square, eyes steady. He wasn't going to back down. And this story, whether anyone liked it or not, wasn't going away.
What would you have done if you witnessed that moment? Would you have spoken up like that Marine, or just pulled out your phone to record? Think carefully, because silence sometimes is a choice that carries consequences. "This isn't right at all," the ticket agent whispered, her eyes fixed on the man in uniform. In the waiting area behind them, a young man in a hoodie pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. The story was beginning to spread, and for the airline that was more dangerous than any internal protocol. Carter's expression remained unreadable, but inside his mind was recording everything, every sideways glance, every evasive move. The manager still hadn't returned, which meant one of two things. He was either scrambling to invent a plausible excuse, or waiting for the situation to blow over. But Carter knew nothing was blowing over now. A voice spoke behind him, soft but clear. "Excuse me, sir." Carter turned his head. A young woman, no more than 25, stood a few feet away. She held a phone in her hand, her gaze fixed on him, hesitant, yet resolute. I don't mean to intrude, but I just want to make sure they're not letting you board, right?" Her voice wasn't loud, but something in the way she spoke, calm, deliberate, drew immediate attention from the people around them. Carter glanced toward the ticket counter, then gave a small nod. "That's right." The girl blinked, as if hoping he'd say something different. But when he confirmed it, she was silent for a beat, then turned her phone screen toward him. "I'm live streaming, people need to see." And just like a dam breaking, the ripple turned into a wave, uncontainable. Another man raised his phone. "This is outrageous," he said, shaking his head. "This man is escorting a fallen soldier. For God's sake." A woman farther back shouted, "Hey, can someone explain why he's being denied?" She waved her arms toward the check-in desk. More people began looking around, unsure whether to step in, but the atmosphere in the terminal had shifted entirely. The soft murmurs of before had turned into a public wave of questioning. The airline could no longer ignore it. The clerk now looked like she wished she could vanish behind her counter. Her fingers hovered stiffly above the keyboard. Her eyes darted around, catching lens after lens pointed her way. And then, the veteran, the one who had spoken up earlier, stepped forward. His voice was deep, steady, needing no volume to silence the room. "I've seen a lot in my life," he said, "but I never thought I'd witness an American soldier, especially one bringing a fallen comrade home, being treated like this." The entire terminal seemed to hold its breath. Even the usual loudspeaker announcements fell silent. Only one sound remained, the soft clicks and buzzes of countless devices recording, all aimed at Carter and the check-in counter. This was no longer just Carter's story. It had become a symbol, a litmus test for how a society treats those who keep the peace. What do you think would happen next? If you stood there, would you turn away or speak up? The sharp beep-beep of notifications rang across the waiting area, each one slicing into the carefully curated image the airline had fought to protect. The Marine veteran still stood tall, shoulders set, his gaze sharp as a blade. "This is a disgrace." The ticket agent began to tremble. Her fingers scrambled over the keyboard, every keystroke a stumble deeper into a maze with no exit. The manager was still nowhere to be seen, no explanation, no statement. Near the back of the line, a man muttered under his breath, "It's trending now." The whole terminal seemed to freeze. Carter said nothing. He didn't need to, because the world was speaking for him. A young mother tried to soothe her toddler in a stroller, but her eyes stayed locked on her phone. Her expression quickly shifted to outrage. Whispered comments swelled into a rising tide of anger. Someone hissed, "This is going everywhere." The young man in the hoodie was still locked into his screen, mumbling like a prophecy. "This isn't going to stop here." Carter stood motionless, his eyes calm, but burning with quiet power. He had seen moments like this before, where those who thought they held control suddenly found themselves lighting a match in a room full of gasoline, and the fire was already lit. A woman in a denim jacket gasped and turned to her husband. "Oh my God, it's on Facebook already." The Marine vet gave a half smile and pulled out his phone. "They don't know the hornet's nest they just kicked." Just then, the airport's loudspeaker buzzed back to life. "Attention passengers! Due to unforeseen circumstances, Flight 237 to Phoenix has been delayed. We apologize for the inconvenience." A few scattered sighs followed, but most people didn't react. Every eye was now on the man in uniform denied the right to board, the soldier on his final mission for a fallen brother. A minute later, a girl by the window gasped. "He's on Twitter!" She held up her phone for those around her. The tweet glowed brightly on the screen, bold and furious. "Well, using my contacts with the U.S. military, CMS Colonel W. boarding a flight while escorting a fallen soldier's remains. Is this how we treat heroes? Let him fly?" Below the tweet, the number of shares, comments, and likes climbed exponentially, like a wildfire catching heavy wind. Then another tweet surfaced, this time from a major veterans organization. "We are aware of the shameful situation unfolding at Port City Airport. Our soldiers deserve better. Stay tuned for action." The crowd murmured, not just with outrage now, but with a growing realization. The airline had lost control. The ticket agent was breathing heavily, eyes wide with panic. She turned and hurried through the frosted glass doors behind her. This time she wasn't returning with an excuse. She was returning to manage a crisis. Carter raised a hand and adjusted his cap. He'd been in far different places before, but they shared a common truth. Power always fears exposure. This wasn't a victory. This wasn't revenge. Because, from the beginning, this had never been about him. This was about Jason Reynolds, a young soldier lying out there, waiting to be brought home. And that mission was not yet completed. The crowd wasn't just watching anymore. They were waiting, holding their breath, expecting something to happen. The mood in the terminal had shifted completely, not curiosity, but judgment. Then finally the manager returned, but this time he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was another man, younger, sharp, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit with a sleek airline ID clipped neatly to his chest. He moved with a practiced stride, the kind that came from managing fires before they could burn too far. He stopped at the counter, scanned the scene quickly, taking in Carter, the veteran, and the dozens of phones pointed at him like loaded triggers. "Colonel," he said formally, "we sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding earlier. It appears there was a system error, but we are doing everything we can to get you on the next available flight." Misunderstanding. Carter had served long enough to know what that word really meant. Misunderstanding meant we got caught. System error meant fix it fast before it blows up any bigger. Carter didn't respond right away. He let the silence hang in the air, like a verdict yet to be delivered. The airline representative shifted slightly, caught under the weight of Carter's stare, the discomfort and the digital firestorm circling overhead. "I see," Carter said at last, his voice calm, not loud but unmistakably clear. "A system error. That's what you're calling it?" "Yes, correct." The man nodded quickly. "An unfortunate oversight, we assure you. There was no intentional wrongdoing." A few people in the crowd scoffed. The Marine veteran shook his head, clearly unconvinced. The airline rep straightened his tie, trying to reassert an authority that had already cracked. "We'd like to personally escort you to your gate. First-class seating, of course." First class. As if a few extra inches of cushion could patch over what had just happened. Carter glanced past him, toward the counter, where the same female clerk still stood, her eyes locked to the computer screen as if, by concentrating hard enough, she could disappear. She was the one who had forced a tight smile while denying him, the one who hadn't even checked properly, who had simply said, "No." He exhaled slowly. "I appreciate the urgency," he said, "but I need to make one thing clear." The representative nodded eagerly. "Of course, Colonel." Carter's tone remained steady, but each word pierced like a spear to the conscience. If no one had filmed this, if no one had spoken up, would I still be standing here? The oxygen seemed to vanish from the room. The airline rep swallowed hard. "Sir, You don't need to answer." Carter cut in. He already knew. And so did everyone watching. A woman nearby whispered, echoing the thoughts of dozens around her. "He's right." The man in the suit tried to smile, smoothing his voice. "We sincerely apologize, Colonel." "This isn't about apologies," Carter replied. "It's about accountability." The crowd stirred. The anger had turned into something heavier. Disappointment. And sometimes disappointment weighs more than rage. The representative clasped his hands tightly, trying to salvage control. "Colonel, please allow us to escort you to the gate now." But before Carter could reply, another voice rang out. Younger, firmer, cutting through the tension. A young airport security officer had stepped up beside Carter. The officer walked to the counter, holding out his phone toward the airline rep. His face was tight, his expression serious. "I think you should see this." The airline rep frowned, took the phone, and began scrolling. His face turned pale almost instantly. From behind, the Marine veteran crossed his arms and stared. "What's going on?" There was no need for an answer. Everything was already clear. The situation had gone far beyond the confines of the terminal. A major news outlet had just published a breaking headline, short and piercing like a strike to the very image the airline had tried to preserve. The U.S. Army colonel denied boarding while escorting fallen soldier. Airline in chaos, scrambling to respond. Below the headline was raw footage from the terminal. Carter, the crowd, the phones filming, every moment captured, undeniable. There was no way to spin it now. The airline representative inhaled deeply, trying to steady his voice. "We sincerely apologize for this unfortunate incident." But his voice was thin, strained, as if he were trying to hold together something that was already falling apart. Carter crossed his arms, his eyes fixed on the man. "The public knows the truth," he said, cutting clean through the hollow diplomacy. Silence swept the room. The rep bit his lip, unable to respond. Carter glanced around. The lens is still recording, the hundreds of eyes watching, waiting. "I don't need a first-class seat," he said. "I don't need privileges. I need respect. And the soldier I'm escorting home deserves the same." A wave of murmurs rippled through the terminal. The Marine veteran nodded slowly, as if listening to his own heart speak. Carter adjusted his cap, posture still perfectly straight. "Sound? Let me complete this mission." But for the airline, the storm was only beginning. Control had been lost long ago. The terminal was no longer a place for boarding. It had become an unofficial press conference, where every phone was now a live broadcast. And then suddenly another man entered. Navy boots suit, firm posture, each step striking the floor with purpose. Not airline staff, not airport security. This man was military. The atmosphere shifted instantly. People stepped aside instinctively. No one told them to. They just recognized it. Real authority had arrived. The ID badge peeking from beneath his lapel confirmed it. He was with the Department of Defense. He approached Carter and extended a hand. "Colonel," he said clearly, "I'm Major Thomas Beckett representing the U.S. Army. We're fully briefed on the situation." The handshake between the two men needed no further words. Carter didn't ask how he had arrived so quickly. He already knew. The military doesn't hesitate when one of their own is treated unjustly. Major Beckett turned to the airline representative, his voice sharp as steel. "Effective immediately, we are taking over this matter. Colonel Carter and the remains of Private Jason Reynolds will not be delayed a minute longer." "He's booked on a commercial flight," the Reb stammered. "I'm aware," Beckett replied, his tone calm but heavy as granite. "We've made new arrangements. The Department of Defense has dispatched a private military aircraft for Colonel Carter. The plane is waiting." A ripple of astonishment swept through the terminal. Wide-aned stares, hushed gasps. No one could hide their shock. The U.S. military had officially intervened. Carter didn't breathe a sigh of relief. He didn't need to be rescued. What he needed was for the mission to proceed with the dignity a fallen soldier deserves. He gave a quiet nod. "Understood, Major." Becker cast one final glance at the airline representative. There was no threat in his eyes, only a cold, unwavering promise. "This will be handled." Carter turned to the Marine, the first to speak up. "Thank you, brother." "We always protect our own," the veteran replied, pride resonating in his voice. Carter gave one last look around the terminal at the strangers who had become witnesses, voices, a wall of honor standing for a soldier. He adjusted his uniform, squared his shoulders, and walked, not toward the boarding gate, but toward something greater, justice and respect. But for the airline, the consequences were just beginning. They had once believed that a few apologies and a press release would smother the outrage. Not this time. The public would not forget. The story dominated national news. Veterans organizations issued fierce condemnations. Lawmakers stepped in, demanding accountability. Then came the financial blow. Stocks plunged. The hashtag boycott airline trended globally. Consumers demanded answers. And finally, the fatal strike. A coalition of military rights organizations filed an official lawsuit for discrimination and violation of the Service Members Civil Relief Act. Under mounting pressure, the airline's CEO appeared before the media. He called it a regrettable misunderstanding and announced that staff involved had been suspended. But everyone knew the damage was already done. Meanwhile, Colonel David Carter continued his mission. He brought Private Jason Reynolds home. He stood solemnly beside the young soldier's family as they welcomed their son for the last time. He didn't need the press. He didn't need praise. What he needed, and what Jason deserved, was respect. That was the real battle. Because respect is not a gift to be granted. It is not something that should require a viral video or a public outrage. It should be a given, a fundamental value in how we treat those who've sacrificed for this country. The people at the airport that day, the Marine, the passengers who spoke up, those who refused to look away, they proved one thing. When people stand together, injustice has nowhere to hide. If you believe in justice, speak up. If you believe those who serve this country deserve respect, don't stay silent. Because it is silence that allows things like this to keep happening. And next time, there may be no video. No one to share it. No hashtag to trend. The story will be buried, and the dignity of a soldier will be quietly denied. This wasn't just the story of one flight. It was a test of character, of responsibility, of gratitude. We may not all wear the uniform, but we can all stand for what's right. Because respect should never require a crisis. It should be the standard every day for everyone.